Broadcasting live from the Phoenix Business Radio X studio in Tempe, Arizona. You are tuning into Culture Crush with Kendra Maples. This podcast will dive into a variety of companies that are crushing it with a great company culture.
Well, Culture Crush is relaunched and we are back again with another episode. We're here highlighting what makes a great company culture and how it affects the overall success of a company. Culture is not just a tag word to be thrown around. It's not something you throw into a job description to try and draw people into applying for your company. It's deeper and it can make or break a company in many cases. On the podcast, we talk with company leaders to learn about real life experiences, tips, and best practices for creating a healthy work environment. And that great leader that we're talking with today is Susan Anable, the Vice President of Public Affairs for the Southwest region of Cox Communications. Welcome.
Hi, Kendra. Thank you for having me today.
I am so excited to have you on. Susan's been with Cox Communications since about 2001, and she's responsible for media relations, community relations, government affairs, and internal communications for Cox in Arizona and Nevada. So that's just the quick snapshot. But really, I want to hear from you and about your connection to Cox and coming over to Cox Communications. So again, thank you for being on. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. And I'm so excited to be here today and to tell you a little bit more and talk a little bit about Cox Communications and what an amazing company it is. And easy for me to say that. I joined the company almost 20 years ago, as you noted. And I, at the time, had been working for the Arizona legislature in the research staff and had been on the government side of the world and working in politics and all of that. And felt very passionate about policy issues. And I wasn't particularly interested necessarily in going to corporate America, but I had young children at the time, was looking for a change, a little change of pace, a little change of opportunity. And Cox Communications just really spoke to me. And it was the people that I talked to that worked for the company that really sold me on why it was a place I wanted to be. And it seemed that every person I met, every leader I met, every employee I met, just impressed me with the passion they had for what they did, the pride they had in the company. And it was very exciting back then. You might recall 20 years ago, we were kind of launching this new thing called home internet service.
Right?
So, they were going from this sleepy little cable television company, right, that gave you great television channels to providing, critical services like internet and telephone service as well. So very exciting time to join the company. And as I said, it really was the people and the vibe and the passion that people had for what they did really is what drew me in.
And the fact that you could see that before even being part of the company, right? And that's one of the things that I love with the show is we can talk with the leaders and we can really dive into the culture of the company internally that a lot of folks don't see from the outside. But that's one of the things that I love about Cox, like you said, that you saw that passion and you saw that strong culture of the people from the outside before you even started with the company.
Right.
And so now that you are on the other side, you've been on the other side for a while now. And now, I mean, after, like you said, you're launching internet from the slow to actual home internet. And now I read that you have 6 million homes across 18 states that
That's
you
right.
guys cover now. One of those houses is mine, just one of the millions. So to go through that growth, that's one of the things that I always love to dive into is how do you keep that strong culture, right? That you saw from the outside, you saw the passion of the people, and it was probably not, that many millions of houses that you had coverage over then. So as the company has grown significantly and coverage has grown, how do you continue to support the people and that passion that you saw in the very beginning?
I would like to take you back to the beginning
Go
of
for it.
where Cox started.
Yeah, go for it.
This company, a lot of people don't realize Cox Communications as a company has been around since 1898. We are a fourth generation family owned private company. And if you think about that, in our industry, in the cable and broadband industry, you really don't find that. It's very difficult to survive. It's very competitive. It's a very expensive business to be in. And the family that started Cox Communications, James M. Cox, back in 1898, he was a school teacher and he decided to start a newspaper in Dayton, Ohio. And that was the first Cox Communications business, was a newspaper in Dayton, Ohio.
Huh.
And so a lot of people don't realize our roots started in journalism, in newspapers, but it quickly evolved in years to come into radio, and then television, and then cable. And now broadband, which is our single biggest product that we sell. And what has been consistent through four generations of family ownership and management of this business is the values and culture of the family that was established in 1898. James M. Cox was very passionate about community. He was passionate about education. He was passionate about politics. Another little known fact, James M. Cox was the governor of Ohio, and in fact ran for president of the United States in 1920 with a young FDR as his running mate. Well, of course, you know what happened. He lost. And good for us, because he kept going in his business and grew Cox Communications to what it is today. And another little known fact, if I can share, a lot of people also don't realize we're owned by a parent company, which is Cox Enterprises. They are in Atlanta, Georgia. And in addition to the cable and broadband business, Cox Communications, which most people in Metro Phoenix and Arizona are familiar with that part of our business, Cox Enterprises also has business interests in the automotive world. Mannheim Auto Auction, which there is an auction here in Tolleson, Arizona. There's one in Tucson, Arizona. And Auto Trader, Kelly Blue Book. Those are all part of the Cox Enterprises automotive business. So very interesting, melding of cable and broadband, automotive business, and more we're now starting to get into renewable and clean energy interests as well. So very, very diverse. And I think that has been part of the, how the company has managed to survive for four generations, has been very willing to take risks and do things that really speak to their core values. So that long answer to your question, but the values of the company have been around for four generations. And our founder, so passionate about his values, he actually left in his will instructions that the company's primary objective was to take care of employees and to take care of the communities that we do business in. That was in his will.
I love
Cool.
that. And and I can now, okay, now I'm so excited. I have so many things to say. I I did a lot of research before having you on the air, and I had no idea of some of these other little pieces that Cox includes and encompasses as well. But one of the things that you mentioned is taking care of the people and the community. Now, that is one thing I can say I have seen Cox be very active in the community. You guys have a whole Cox Charities branch as well, correct? So how does that kind of tie into all of this?
That's right. We've had for almost 25 years, and it actually started here in Phoenix. So something we're really proud of here locally, a Cox Charities organization. It's our version of our nonprofit, but we ask our employees, who are very generous with their time as volunteers, but we also ask them on an annual basis to commit their dollars to the Cox Charities program. So we fundraise primarily with our employees, who give very generously. And we also work in the community to find partners who help us fundraise. We typically have a large golf tournament every year, and our vendors and some of our partners and friends support that as well. But all of that money goes into the Cox Charities program. And we have a committee of employees who every year review all the grant applications that we receive, and they determine where the dollars go into the community. And our focus is primarily around youth education and technology, but that group of employees who are contributors and give their own time and money to Cox Charities help us decide which community organizations receive those funds. And we'll typically generate close to $500,000 a year from our employees alone. They're incredibly generous, and participation levels between 70 and 80% of our employees who give every year. Really phenomenally generous employees.
Wow. I mean, and it goes back into that passion that they have, not just the passion for being part of Cox and being part of that, that bigger picture, but it goes back to, what James put in his will. It's the community, and especially here at a local level. So you said that actually started here in Phoenix.
Yes.
How does it work with the charities? Is it separate in each state, or is it
Mhm.
big picture? Does it stay local in that community area for each state?
Great question. So you mentioned earlier we operate in 18 different states, and so there's actually 6 regions. My region is Arizona, Nevada, and we all have our own separate Cox Charities programs, and that enables us to be very connected and understand what the local needs are. I love when people tell me that they didn't realize that our company was headquartered in another state because they felt like what we did and how we engage and what we knew about the local community and where the needs were and where the great organizations were that were doing awesome things, that it felt like that's where we were. This is where we're headquartered and this is how we operate. So having those Cox Charities organizations across all of our regions really helps us to connect locally in our markets and understand what the needs are and help those organizations who are doing just amazing things to take care of our communities.
And I can say the same thing. I've seen you guys here local, and I just thought, oh, you're just here for us. And then as I did more deep diving, I'm like, oh, you guys cover a lot more than I realized. But
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And then it's, that passion of the employees. So the employees are the ones that are giving into this charity. So like you said, over $500,000. That's crazy. And I love that because it's that investment of not just Cox in the community, but the employees and the staff in the community. What are some of the other areas that are important that you see for the employees at Cox? Are there other areas like this that they really have passion, that they really take on?
You know, in the last couple of years, and it's always been part of our culture to have a very diverse and inclusive organization. But in the last few years, the company has identified that there are groups of employees within our workforce that are very passionate about who they are. And so we've had the emergence of these employee resource groups, right? So it's our Hispanic employees, our African American employees, our veteran employees, our women, our young professionals. They've been able to establish these employee resource groups that allow them to support each other, to support their culture, and also support the community. So, our veterans ERG, Employee Resource Group, for example, recently for Veterans Day, they got together and found some local charitable organizations supporting veterans groups, and they made contributions to them and they volunteer their time. So I think what we've seen, the way that employees have been able to connect and be very engaged and committed and utilize connections they have at work with maybe people that are like-minded or like them
Mhm.
to do more things in the community to help each other advance their careers and their professional opportunities and to grow and develop. So those are some really neat ways that the company has enabled. We also have a very active diversity council in the Southwest region, and we have leaders from across our 3 markets. Phoenix, Tucson, and Las Vegas, who come together and they champion work and opportunity in within the context of diversity inclusion for our workforce and in the community. And that could also look at like things like supplier diversity. What are we doing to make sure that we are buying our goods and services from local companies that are diverse owned and operated? So we have committed goals around that. We have committed goals around what we do in the community. And one of those I'd like to speak about and share a little bit more with you about is our Connect to Compete program. This is probably the program the company is most passionate about, from our president and CEO, Pat Esser, right down to our frontline employees. And that is helping to bridge the digital divide. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of kids in our own state that don't have access to the internet because it's either not affordable, it's not available. There may be, other barriers in the home to adoption. And digital literacy is also a huge obstacle for some of our families. And Connect to Compete is a program that provides a low cost internet service for low income families that have a child in the home who is in K through 12 and needs a connection to the internet. And boy, I'll tell you, with the pandemic this year and the need for kids to be able to learn from home, not just to do homework, but to actually go to class every day,
Yeah.
we've realized how critical that need is. So we're very committed to the Connect to Compete program. We've been offering it for 7 years now. And it's $9.95 a month for internet service for families that are qualified through some of the programs. Like the free and reduced lunch program would be a great example of an eligibility criteria for Connect to Compete. And we also look for partners who might have, computers available. The Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, great example. They came up this year with an opportunity for people to bring in their old unneeded computers to the data doctors, get them refurbished and get them deployed out to the kids in the schools, so that as they're going home and continuing their education in a virtual learning environment, they've got a computer and they've got a connection from Cox. So that is a place where we have strong uniform support from the top of the organization down to our frontline employees to help make sure that we're helping bridge that digital divide and connect those kids, because they will fall behind in school, just in a normal environment, learning environment, not having access to the internet, and their fellow classmates do, and their homework's assigned online, and the teachers are posting their grades online or communicating with parents online. It's a huge gap. So that's something that the company is super passionate and committed to.
I love that. And especially not only being so passionate and committed to that, but having the foresight that that was a need, right? You said that was 7 years ago that you started that. And who would have thought, fast forward 7 years, we're in a pandemic. All of our kids are, at home or doing it online. I know my stepdaughter has her tablet, and then she still has to have internet at the house, though. And so, I mean, that's her entire school is virtual right now. And Karen, our producer, same thing. Her son's doing virtual. So, how amazing for you guys to have that foresight that that was something of need 7 years ago, but now it's already been implemented. So, I'm sure by this point, for folks to be able to show their eligibility and actually be part of that program, now you've worked out the kinks. And now I'm sure it's probably extremely easy for somebody to be able to go to Cox and say, hey, this is, a program we want to be part of.
Right. Well, and we've worked on it over the years to make it an easy enrollment process,
Mhm.
to make it easy for schools to the extent that they want to make sure their kids have access to be able to connect kids that are students in their school as well. So we're constantly working at ways to improve it, make it easy. Make it low cost. We give them a free modem. There's no installation cost. And in fact, during the pandemic, we've been able to offer the first 2 months for free to new families that sign up for the program, just to get them going, to
Yeah.
get on the program, make sure they've got access. And, beyond even the kids in the household, we're certainly seeing that having an internet connection in the home can be life changing, not just for the kids, but for their family members, as a way to research job opportunities or to advance education. There's as we all know, it has become really an essential service that we're all very dependent on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially now at this point, we were talking earlier before we went live about how, all of the meetings we do, I've seen into everybody's houses now on Zoom calls and video calls. I mean, we're all working remote, and it very much is a necessity, almost like, you talk about food and water, but now in this day and age, that really is a necessity. And I like that you highlighted for the whole family, not just those students that need it, but job searching and doing work remote as well.
That's right. That's right. We know it's a small part that we can do,
Mhm.
And we need lots of partners. It is always great to have organizations. And again, I'll call out some of our friends in the community have stepped up. The Arizona Cardinals during the pandemic, they stepped up with us to fund students to have computers and a year of our Connect to Compete service. We provided the computer, they provided the year of internet service to the family. Why shouldn't we be doing that? That is a great way that the community and companies in the community can work together to
Mhm.
try to address that unmet need. And so we love those kinds of opportunities to partner with other local businesses and companies that have a similar motivation to help those in our community who need it the most.
I love that. Now, I have a question as far as partnerships then. When you're looking for companies to partner with, Cox has such an amazing culture and the way that you guys work and the passion and giving to the community. Does that always seem to align when you're looking for partnerships, or is that something that you try and look for as well in partnership organizations? Is finding a company that's similar in alignment like that?
That's a great question. And I think while we don't have some, litmus
Yeah.
test list, we do gravitate towards other organizations and businesses who are like-minded, who
Mhm.
have a shared passion for community or for populations of need as we do. And so we just, I think, kind of naturally gravitate to each other. We find opportunities. And look, Phoenix is one of the smallest big cities there is out there because people are so well connected. And so being active in the business community, being active in community organizations, and we do expect that from our leaders at Cox too. I mean, speaking about culture and expectation of, what would you expect working at Cox? If you're a leader at our company, we want you to be part of the community. And that means serving on the boards of the organizations that align with our values. And whether it's a business organization or a nonprofit that's doing amazing things in the education space,
Mhm.
we want our business leaders to be active and to be involved. And quite frankly, that's where a lot of our partnership opportunities evolve from, is those connections that are made sitting at a board meeting for a nonprofit that you serve on, and you discover that X company has a interest and a passion for issues that are similar to yours.
Mhm.
And so that's just one of the many wonderful things about doing business and being in business in Arizona.
I love that. It's like there was one of the shows the other day. We had Brian Stinson on from Peak Fleet, and he was talking about it's like magnets. And
Yeah.
not only are we magnetic that we, are attracted to other companies that have similar values and similar culture, but magnets work the other way around, right? So you could repel from each other. So we definitely tend to, like you said, we align with companies that have that same culture and have those same values. Now,
And
you mentioned values.
Mhm.
Um, does Cox have kind of a list of values or an ethos that they go by? I mean, I know the answer to this, but I really want to know more. Um, that you are very vocal about, especially with onboarding, letting people know day one, hey, these are our values, this is our mission, this is our ethos, this is what we go by.
Yeah. We like to refer to it as what we stand for, right?
Mhm.
So we have a new leader of our company. He's the fourth generation of the family, came into that role. His name's Alex Taylor, and he's been at the helm now at Cox Enterprises for the last about 3 years. And he came in and he said, I really want to have, a battle cry, a North Star, something that we can point to and say, this is what we stand for. This is who we are. And what he and his leadership team came up with, and it was based on listening to employees, which I thought was awesome. They wanted to know what employees thought.
Heck yeah.
That vision is empower people today to build a better future for the next generation. And that was like, wow, that was like mind blowing. We're like, no, we're the cable and broadband company. Really? This is us. I mean, and people embraced it because we had already built that culture that I think was ready to accept such a big, heady vision like
Yeah,
this.
I love that. Say that again one more time.
Okay, it's empower people today to build a better future for the next generation.
I love that. And that really does encompass what you guys are doing.
Yep. And, if you have doubts or you're uncertain about where your place is in a company, that's pretty validating and grounding to say, oh my gosh, I'm here to help people have a better future and the next generation be able to do that. And you do that by empowering the people that are working today. The people in your workforce, if they have the ability to make decisions, to innovate, to react, to develop and to grow because they're empowered, that's the big word in that statement in terms of how do we get there.
And the fact that Alex took what the employees were thinking, what the employees thought already, to be able to take that information and that feedback to come up with such a strong, as he called it, battle cry. I think that's fantastic because that's where you're going to find this information. You're going to get it from the employees anyway.
Right. And, Kendra, embedded in all of that, and every company has their guiding principles. What are the things that we get up every day for and strive to in our work? And, it ends up being sort of a code of conduct that, that sounds kind of boring, but it really is important to helping understand the culture of Cox Communications and how we try to attract the type of people to come work for us that we're able to bring in and what we expect of them when they do come to be part of our company. And it's things like honoring your responsibilities and your commitments, having respect for each other. And the overarching guiding principle above all of that is to always do the right thing. And that's for people in general. It's for the company, certainly, but it's also for the planet, and again, it's this kind of big thinking that the world is bigger than just the service you're providing today to make sure somebody's internet connection is connected at home. That's a physical thing. But what it enables for the people that live in that home is access to the world, access to their job, access to education, access to information and entertainment. And so, people take that responsibility really, at a super high level. But the do the right thing is a huge part of that. And we see examples of it every day in our business. The employees that do just the most amazing things for our customers, for each other, for the community, they really are the ambassadors of that culture for us.
I love that. Do you guys have a way of sharing these things internally? You've got your region and then with the other states as well, but do you have an opportunity if there is some amazing thing that some employee has done that you can highlight and share so that everyone else knows about those examples too?
We do. And in fact, just within the last couple of years, I mentioned Alex Taylor. One of the things he brought into his leadership was having recognition of employees down to the front line, not just leaders that have done amazing things for the company, but people at the front line who've done extraordinary things for our customers or advanced some technology or innovation within the company. People who might just be quietly working away at their jobs, but really having an impact so far beyond, what they probably even realize. And so this James M. Cox Recognition Award that's given is exactly that. It's those frontline employees who do amazing things. And I'll share an example with you of an Arizona employee who was recognized last year with that award. And it was one of our field technicians down in Tucson. And what he did was really quite extraordinary, and especially to the family that was impacted. But this gentleman was on his regular service rounds. He was at a customer's home taking care of a service connection there. And it was in the summer months where we have, the horrible monsoon storms that can, get blown up in the afternoon and be very violent and sometimes incredibly dangerous.
Mhm.
And this area he was working in was adjacent to a wash down in Tucson. And while he was packing up his truck after the service call at this customer's home, he heard somebody yelling, "Oh my gosh, please help me, please help me. There's a kid in the wash who's being washed away." And there was an 11-year-old boy who'd been swept away in a monsoon flood down in Tucson. And this technician ran over, got a rope from his truck, secured his rope to the tree, and he waded out and he saved this kid's life. And it was phenomenal. And the best part of it, it was a wonderful story because he literally had saved this young man's life. We didn't hear about it from him. We heard about it from customers who called us and sent us emails and said, "You need to know what your technician is." I mean, it gives me chills just talking
I
about
know.
it.
I'm gonna cry.
Right? And he just was in the right place at the right time. But again, always do the right thing. And in the right moment, the right thing was to engage and to it, in fact, risk his own life to save this child, which he did.
Yeah.
But,
And
it's like I said, in the whole scheme of things, had nothing to do with the service provided by Cox Communications, everything to do with the character and the type of person that works for us.
yeah, that's, I'm like teary eyed. That's but and like you said, it's, the customers and the neighbors that are calling and saying, "Hey, you should know about this." He did what he knew he needed to do. The fact that he even took those steps, I mean, that whole fight or flight, I'm the one that freezes and I don't know what to do. So the fact that he could take that initiative and go through, that's fantastic. And like you said, it's the people that you have, and it's beyond just, hey, this is my job. Let me do some wiring and whatever it is. It's way beyond that. We're teaching my stepdaughter that right now, that it has to do with what you're doing when nobody's watching, right? What are you
Exactly
supposed
right.
to do that's just doing the right thing? Nobody's there. You're not going to get a gold star. You're doing it because you need to.
Yeah. And Kendra, if I can share another story, because I love this one
Please.
too. This was very relevant to the current pandemic we're all dealing with and surviving. Early on, back in April, early April, we had a collection specialist who physically lives here in Phoenix, but she supports Cox across our other states that we do business in. And she's got a tough job. She's dealing with customers that haven't been able to pay their bill. And so she's got some incredible skills to begin with to deal with people who are dealing with tough situations.
Hmm.
So she gets on the phone with this older woman, this elderly woman who lived here in the valley. And after she's talked to this woman for a little bit, she's established, this woman lives here in Phoenix. She had been in the hospital the night before and was one of the possible positive COVIDs. They back in at that point, we were getting a couple of day turnaround on COVID tests, so she wasn't sure. They thought she was a potential positive, so they told her, you need to go home and stay home. You can't go out, stay at your house. So this gal goes home and she's behind on her cable bill. She talks to our collection specialist who helps work out a payment plan for her and figure things out. And in the conversation, this older woman gets a little bit emotional and she says, well, I've got prescriptions I need to pick up, but I can't leave the house. And I don't know anybody here. I don't have any family here in the area. And so our collection specialist, she says, well, where do you live? And she finds out where this gal lives. And it's not far from the office where our collection specialist was working from. And on her lunch hour, our collection specialist went to the pharmacy and picked up this woman's prescription and paid for it and delivered it to her house. And the woman had given the pharmacy permission to give this gal her prescription, and she paid for it out of her own pocket and delivered it to her house. And I'm like, who does that? I mean, that was just, I know we have great employees and I know they do the right thing, but what a phenomenon. And again, didn't hear about it from her. Heard about it through a friend of a friend in the company who worked with that person's leader. And I'm like, what a phenomenal story of somebody who went above and beyond. And again, had nothing to do with the business. She was making sure people were paying their bills.
Yeah.
And she helped her do that and then did so much more for her. And we heard from her. The woman sent us the most lovely letter saying, what an amazing employee you have. She did this for me. She didn't know me from Adam.
Oh my gosh, I love it. We could have story day with you all day.
All right, thank you for allowing me to share just a couple of ones that, like I said, they give me goosebumps every time I get to talk about them and share these stories about what amazing employees we have. And
Yeah.
let's face it, we work in an industry where we provide services that people use every day,
Mhm.
and it doesn't always go flawlessly. And so we know, and our employees deal with employee or customers that may have a, service challenge with us or a billing challenge with us, and that comes with the territory. But I'm grateful to say that is the vast minority of our customer interactions. That for the most part, we provide the service and we take care of our customers, and hopefully along the way we can touch other people in different ways as well in a positive way.
I love that. That's amazing. And through all of this, obviously there's new challenges and new frustration through this whole pandemic. Have you seen just the strength and the passion of your employees stay consistent like that? Or have you had to implement maybe new ways to continue to motivate and continue to encourage them? I mean, it's a difficult, crazy time for everybody, but
Yeah.
how has that motivation been with your employees through all of this?
Yeah. It's a great question. And as you might expect, with a company that has relied so much on culture and connectivity and community engagement, it really has been challenging to try to impart that culture and those employee engagement opportunities, those community giving opportunities, when the COVID situation doesn't really allow us to do it in the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Our employees that love to volunteer and do team builders and go into the community and go to the food bank or go to school and paint a technology center or whatever, they've not been able to do that, and so they're frustrated. They want to engage, they want to do things, and so we've had to try to find different ways to keep them engaged, keep them passionate, keep them connected, because a lot of them, that's what they want to do. They want to help, they want to be involved. So we've had to kind of change the way we do things, and that is including how we do Cox Charities. We had a very fun grant ceremony this year, which we normally do in our cafeteria, and we invite all of our nonprofits in to get their
Went
checks.
to one of those. It was fantastic.
They're fun,
They're
and we
so
get
fun.
right, we get all of the nonprofits together, and they don't always get a chance to interact with each other, and our employees come, the ones who serve on the committee that decide where the grant dollars go. And well, we couldn't do that this year. So we did what everybody does. We do a Zoom version of it, right? So we invite all of our grant recipients and we have them all on screen, and we have their all fun foam checks for them to share. And we allowed some of the grant recipients to share their stories and some of their challenges. And we invited our employees and the committee to be involved and to be part of it. And yeah, it wasn't exactly the way we've always done it, but we've learned to pivot. That's our new word, right, for 2020.
Yeah.
We've all learned to pivot and find new ways of doing things. And for my team responsible for all of our external relationships and how we engage with the community, how we deal with government and the media and community, it's been a big challenge to say, well, we can't do that event the way we've always done it. We couldn't have our Cox Charities golf tournament this year. So how else can we, still continue the core mission of Cox Charities? How else can we keep our employees engaged?
Mhm.
Um, we recently had a service awards event for our employees, which we normally do every year as a very nice lunch. And we honor our employees who've been with the company for specific milestones. So 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Might surprise people to know we have people in the company who've been in their roles with the company for 40, 45 years. And we recognize them. We have a nice lunch. We do a fun program, and we talk about what was going on in the world the year they came to work for Cox. And we've done that in each of the markets, but it's never been one where all of our employees are together across all three markets: Phoenix, Tucson, and Las Vegas. And this year, because it was virtual, we were able to bring everybody together, and we made it really fun. We invited our vice presidents to get into their roles in presenting each of these 5-year milestone groups with their recognition. So a couple of them may have gotten into costume and really played up their role. And for our employees, it was really fun for them to see their leaders getting involved in that way and trying to continue this wonderful tradition that our employees really look forward to. They love just a very, simple lunch and recognition of their time they've spent with the company. So yeah, another example of a way we've kind of had to figure out different ways of doing things to continue to engage our employees and keep them connected.
Yep. Especially, I mean, those individuals that, they want to have those conversations, those connections. They look forward to interacting with everybody in person, and then to have to, be on hold for that kind of stuff. And I can imagine for you that's difficult to oversee and support a team and everyone else, because same thing, you're remote, you can't be there in person and, you know, travel around as much to encourage everybody. So I love the creativity with trying to to figure out how it's going to work. I love that you had some of the VPs in costume. Fantastic. I
Well,
think
like I said, strange times, and you put a challenge out there to people, and and you never know what people can rise to. And I think what impresses me most is the resilience.
mhm,
And for everybody out there that has been working from home and trying to be successful, it's exhausting. And there's a certain amount of energy we get from each other's physical presence.
mhm,
And that's really hard to capture and create on a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams meeting. And finding creative ways to connect with people. We actually, in the first early months of the pandemic, our senior team divided up a list of our leaders outside of our own groups and just made personal phone calls and just said, hey, I'm just calling to see how you're doing and to let we support you. And and no agenda, no expectation other than just to make that connection and see how they're doing. And at the time, I'll be honest, it felt like, my goodness, I have this really long list of employees I need to reach out to. It was the most gratifying thing to talk to people, and they were so appreciated. Just somebody reaching out, not with a ask or a request or
yep,
or a project, just to say, hey, how are you doing? How are
yep,
things going? They
yep,
just love that. And so, it's just little things like that. And I think we're all figuring out how to do that. And we're going to be doing it for a while longer, for sure.
yep.
And, finding best practices from other companies is also, I've found, to be a great way to figure out our way through this. There's no playbook. There's no handbook for companies.
Not at
It
all.
says, if you have a global pandemic, here are the things you need to do. Step one. Nobody wrote this book. We're all
Yep.
figuring it out. And I really, really love, and I am unashamed of stealing other people's great ideas and practices. If they're working in other companies and people are successful with it, let's bring it to our team and say, hey, is this something we should consider? And I think that's, how we support each other in the community too.
And I think that businesses and organizations are all on that same page. And I think everyone's okay with it. Steal ideas, share ideas. I mean, I can't tell you how many books and audiobooks that I've read and listened to, and just to be able to, find more value. How do I give back more value? So I love, like you said, even just having a quick phone call. Hey, how are you doing? It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be the back to back Zoom calls, especially right now. I feel like sometimes the days are even more draining because we can cram more in, right? I'm not traveling to a meeting and back. So I'm right there. That's an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of my day that I can now fill with a phone call or a Zoom call. And so sometimes we're going back to back to back. So those phone calls of just checking in, those are those are so important right now,
Mhm.
for all of us. Just the text, "Hey,
Yeah.
how's it going?" The LinkedIn message, "Hey, how are you doing?" Even if the response is, "Eh, uh, I'm alive." Hey, that's a plus right now, right?
Well, and let's face it, not everybody, I like to say, we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat.
Yes.
And I worry so much about people who may live alone. I worry about the older people in our community who are isolated because that's the safest place for them to be. And, thinking about just simple ways we can try to stay connected as a community. And there's got to be silver linings to all of this. And I think every time that we figure out some practice that should transcend and continue beyond the pandemic because it's a good thing to do, that's a silver lining for sure. There are little gifts that are coming out of this. They're often hard to appreciate when we're going through the grind, but there are certainly things that I think we're learning that we should do differently just because they're good things to do, and they're the right things to do.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. If there's a little bit that we can take away from all of this craziness, then we can at least save it till later and continue going on. I love that. Is there anything else? And this is a question for you specifically, not necessarily Cox as a whole, but is there anything else that's something that's a highlight that's, fulfilling for you with Cox? And it may be something we've kind of already talked about, but is there anything else that for you personally
Mhm.
that it just keeps you going with Cox? You're gonna keep going 20 years past. You're gonna be that person that gets the lunch at 40 years.
Oh gosh, I hope so. That is a great question. And I think as much as it matters that the services we provide are important and they are needed by people, to do their job, to be educated, I think it's the privilege of working with people that have a shared purpose.
Mhm.
And I think, and I've had these jobs myself, you can work in a job and be, happy because you're challenged professionally or you get to do something that you love. But the jobs that really become careers and a passionate personal connection are the ones where you understand your role and what you are contributing, not just to the business, but to the people you work with.
Mhm.
And so I have felt that way from day one when I joined Cox. They have such an incredible investment in developing and growing people that it is even beyond just your role as an employee, but your role as a human being.
Mhm.
And so I would look back on my career at Cox and say, as much as it was about delivering great services to people, it was about um, being part of a community of people that work at Cox that really have a shared purpose and we feed off of each other. And I know that probably sounds a little hokey, but it's sure easy to get up and go to work every day, even if it is down the hall in my office.
Right?
Yeah, knowing that you work with great people that have a shared purpose.
Yeah. And is there anything else, and maybe it's been something new that you've learned through all of this, but is there anything else that you feel with your leadership background that you bring to the team at Cox, or that you want to continue to kind of bring to your staff, your employees, your team members?
I think the thing that I have learned the most and got to practice the most during this pandemic is helping people understand that trying new things is the right thing to do. It may not be the way we used to do it, it may not even work, but it's worth doing to try. And so being creative and taking risks, I feel even more emboldened and passionate around in the last 8 to 9 months, because that's how I think it incents my team to keep going forward. It's very easy to wallow in, well, we can't do that anymore. We'll just not do that. Well, maybe we can do it. We'll just do it differently, or maybe we'll do something different. And I would tell my team, it's never a bad thing to try something new, even if it doesn't work or it fails. But if you don't try, then that's a failure.
Mhm.
And so that's probably the thing. If I would, I guess, point to the one thing that is part of, I think, how I've tried to show up for my team is encouraging them that that's okay. More than ever, risk taking is okay.
Yeah. And from a leader point of view, having you say that, I can say is, being a middle manager or a supervisor or being at the bottom, as an employee, that's huge to hear from your leadership. Ken Smurse, the CEO of Zealous, he was on a previous podcast with us, and he said, you just got to let the horses run. And sometimes they might run in a different direction that you didn't necessarily plan, but you gotta let them run. You gotta let them try. You have to, as the leader, let them, prepare for you being out of that role. So let them try. Maybe it fails, right? Or maybe you come up with an amazing new idea and new process and new program that can be incorporated into the company. So you just gotta let them go sometimes.
Right. That's right. Sometimes it's a hard thing to do as a leader, especially if you're one that's held to making certain quotas or metrics, and and things that have worked in the past. You want to keep doing, but I think this type of situation we've been faced with in the last year is just the kind of catalyst
Mhm.
for growth, for opportunity, and for innovation. And we should be fueling it and not suppressing it.
I agree. I love that. So, as we start to wrap up and get close to the end, because amazingly enough, it's already been almost an hour, I have one question that I always ask our guests, because from your perspective, and this is a hard question. I already gave you a heads up about it. It's a hard question, but if you had to kind of take Cox Communications, from, back in the beginning with the newspaper till now, all of the different parts of the company. If you had to encompass all of that and wrap it into, describe the culture of Cox in one word, can do that. I'll give you a couple words. But if you wrapped it up in one word, how would you describe that?
Connecting life's most important priorities.
I like that. I like that. Or even just connection, right?
Yeah,
People
exactly.
connection, internet connection,
Yep.
human connection. I love that. That's a perfect one. That's
Connecting people.
fantastic.
Yep.
Well, I am so appreciative to be able to have you on. We were talking before the show with Karen, our producer, and the owner here of Phoenix Business Radio X. We were talking about we've had a couple of your folks from Cox on previous shows in the past, and after some of these stories, you can come on anytime. I mean, I cried a little bit today, but I feel like we could have Cox Connection story time
Mhm.
anytime. So
That.
I am extremely appreciative to have you on, as well as, some of the others that we've had on previously. Before we step away, I do want to give you the opportunity. Any last minute, messages that you want to throw out there, as well as how can folks get in touch with you
Mhm.
or even support? You've mentioned, looking for partnerships. So anything like that that you want to throw out there in the last few moments, it's all yours, Susan.
Sure. Well, thank you. And again, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this show with you today. Really appreciate what you're doing and the highlight and the focus you're bringing to all the amazing companies that are doing amazing things in our community. Honored to be amongst them. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I would offer, if anybody would like to reach out and connect with me about any of the programs or opportunities or partnership potential, please feel free. You can email me. I don't mind giving out my email address, susan.anable, Anable, at cox.com. And I'm happy to connect you with the right people in our organization and within my team. We might be able to help make an important connection to make life better for somebody. So I'm happy to do that. And again, thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your show today.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely fantastic. This is a great way to start the week. You have Thanksgiving that we wrapped up. Everyone's thankful, positive, and then a great conversation. So thank you. I appreciate that. So thank you for joining us on the Culture Crush podcast, the podcast that does a deep dive with company leaders to learn about real life experiences, tips for a good culture, and best practices for creating a healthy work environment where employees can find joy and satisfaction in their work. So today we went from newspaper to radio to internet. It started with James M. Cox. Now we've got Alex Taylor. Today we had Susan Anable on, all wrapped up in some amazing company culture. So we thank you, and we'll see you next time as we crush on some more companies and their culture.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Culture Crush, the only podcast out there that does a deep dive of companies that are crushing it with a great company culture. If you think your company has a strong culture that should be highlighted, please reach out to Kendra Maples on LinkedIn or email us at culturecrushpodcast@gmail.com.